Evening, Ash. Evening, Sean.
Mate. Evening, Sean. Hi, guys.
Hi, Ash.
You all right?
Yeah, real good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have we all had good weeks?
Sorry?
Have we all had good weeks?
Well, yeah, busy.
Yes, yeah, it's been productive. Yes.
I've been cooking. I've got this cookbook coming out later on in the year, so I've decided to cook and photograph everything. So I need to get to the gym.
Is that some of the photos you've been sharing on Facebook?
Yeah, one or two of them. Yeah.
They look bloody gorgeous.
Oh, do they? Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Good of you.
Yeah.
I put on about £3 just looking at the photographs.
Yeah. Sticky toffee pudding today with cheddar ice cream.
Oh, I need to try some cheddar ice cream.
Yes, you do.
Yes, I do.
We'll sort something out.
Cheddar ice cream.
Yeah.
Right.
You get
mascarpone.
What? Salted caramel.
Right.
Yeah. Ice cream. Well, this is like salted caramel, but about 5 times better. It reminds you of it, and then it goes on a little further. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'm sitting here with an erection now, just thinking about it.
Yeah. As soon as I saw cheddar cheese ice cream, I just thought, yeah, well, mascarpone ice cream is kind of a cheese-based ice cream, and then so it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Works a treat.
Wow. Oh yeah, that sounds lovely. Right, yeah. Should I be?
Well, I'll go. Ash, what have we been reading this week?
What we've been reading this week is the Dunwich Horror by H.P. Lovecraft. Should I do a synopsis? Do we want to find out whether we enjoyed it or?
Hang on, let me just get myself comfortable, because I remember the last time we did H.P. Lovecraft and your synopsis. You ready? Right. Go on then.
Are you sitting comfortably, children? Shall we begin? Right. In the isolated, desolate, decrepit village of Dunwich, Wilbur Whately is the hideous son of Lavinia Whately, a deformed and unstable albino mother, and an unknown father, although he's alluded to in passing by mad old Whately as Yog Sothoth. Strange events surround his birth and precocious development. Wilbur matures at an abnormal rate, reaching manhood within a decade. Locals shun him and his family, and animals fear and despise him due to his odour. All the while, his sorcerer grandfather indoctrinates him into certain dark rituals and the study of witchcraft. Various locals grow suspicious after old Whately buys more and more cattle, yet the number of his herd never increases, and the cattle in his field become mysteriously afflicted with severe open wounds. Wilbur and his grandfather have sequestered an unseen presence at their farmhouse. This being is connected somehow to Yog Sothoth. Year by year, this unseen entity grows to monstrous proportions, requiring the two men to make frequent modifications to their residence. People begin to notice a trend of cattle mysteriously disappearing. Wilbur's grandfather dies. His mother disappears soon afterwards. The colossal entity eventually occupies the whole interior of the farmhouse. Wilbur ventures to Miskatonic University in Arkham to procure their copy of the Necronomicon. Miskatonic's library is one of only a handful in the world to stock an original. The Necronomicon has spells that Wilbur can use to summon the old ones, but his family's copy is damaged and lacks the page he needs to open the door. When the librarian, Dr. Henry Armitage, refuses to release the university's copy to him and has, by sending warnings to other libraries, thwarted Wilbur's efforts to consult their copies, Wilbur breaks into the library at night to steal it. A guard dog, maddened by Wilbur's alien body odour, attacks Wilbur with unusual ferocity, killing him. When Dr. Armitage and 2 other professors arrive on the scene, they see Wilbur Whately's semi-human corpse before it melts completely, leaving no evidence. With Wilbur dead, no one attends to the mysterious presence growing in the Whately farmhouse. Early one morning, the Whately farmhouse explodes and the thing, an invisible monster, rampages across Dunwich, cutting a path through fields, trees and ravines, leaving huge prints the size of tree trunks. The monster eventually makes forays into inhabited areas. The invisible creature terrorizes the town for several days, killing 2 families and several policemen, until Dr. Armitage, Professor Warren Rice, and Dr. Francis Morgan arrive with the knowledge and weapons needed to kill it. The use of a magic powder renders it visible, just long enough to send one of the crew into shock. The barn-sized monster screams for help in English just before the spell destroys it, leaving a huge burned area. In the end, its nature is revealed. It is Wilbur's twin brother, though it looked far more like the father than Wilbur did. Does that sound all right?
Very well done.
Thank you, yeah.
I'm going to give you applause for that reading.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now I know how to do a synopsis.
I'm just sort of like kind of pleased with the word thwarted getting in there.
Loved it. The audio book that I listened to,
Right.
and when he personifies the characters, he was going very Yorkshire and thwarted, kind
That's
of
what I
just
guess.
like. Very good.
Sean, what did you think of the story then? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, I thought it was a craftsman at work. The way that even from the very first sentence to the very last sentence, I was spellbound with the whole story. We've talked in the past about in different podcasts about keeping the reader's interest, and which is a very fine balance. You can overdo it, you can underdo it.
Yeah.
The balance of his writing was so impressive, and for a horror story, it's the first one that really kind of, you can pitch yourself in that place because the description was so wonderful.
Really, really good description, and I think he does hold us all the way through. Are you on the same page, Colin? Are you?
Oh, absolutely. You know that I worship the ground that HP used to walk on. And I do think he is a master craftsman. And we've discussed HP a couple of times before. And his use of language is not just descriptive, it's emotive in the way that he describes things. He finds the words that create an emotion over the top of something. So it's not just a dark and shadowy wood. It is a damn fucking creepy, nasty, really don't want to walk there, wood. And this one, I mean, I make no bones of the fact that I'm a role player, and I make no bones of the fact that one of my favorite games to play used to be Call of Cthulhu, and this is part of the mythos of the Cthulhu cult stuff, and it is just one of my favorites of all time. I think it is, I have to agree completely with the way that Sean described it. It is a masterpiece. It's a master at work.
It is. It's like the Rembrandt of literature, and horror literature anyway.
I think it's absolutely brilliant. I love the horror element of it. I've only got one criticism of it. Am I allowed to?
Yeah.
I'm scared to now. I mean, you guys have both said, "Oh, it's really, really good," and I feel as though I'm going to sort of
no, criticize away.
Bring it on.
Right. I think I have a protective screen on here. His horror elements are absolutely brilliant. The whole notion of cosmic horror and these things that come from somewhere else, can't get enough of those. The thing that I don't think he does very well is when he's writing dialogue. I think his dialogue sounds contrived and artificial throughout. But I also think it's one of those things where everything else is working so well, it's actually forgivable. It's like, I'm a huge Buffy fan. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I thought every episode of that was absolutely brilliant. And you go back and watch them now, and the dialogue is absolutely perfect. The plot lines are brilliant. The acting's fantastic. A couple of the special effects are a little bit wanky. And you sort of like think, I can forgive it. It's 25 years old. Fuck it. The rest of it's really good. Or you'll sort of like sit and watch an episode and Spike will come on. Fantastic character, great dialogue, beautiful plot arc, and his British accent travels all over the British Isles, sort of like going from Scouse to Bristol to a bit Brummy to London. but you overlook it and you forgive it. And I think we overlook and forgive Lovecraft's dialogue because everything else is so good in there. Is that fair?
Well, I think you're possibly right. I mean, I guess it was an actor who was reading the audiobook I listened to. He was a bit unsure as well, of course, and he didn't know where to pitch the voice properly. And I think because it was awkward to read, it was just awkward for him. So yeah, I completely agree. But it was 1929, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've got an example of it here. I was sort of like, and he says he, Miss Corey, as how, and this isn't me trying to be stupid with the pronunciation, but we've got how spelled Haow.
Yes.
So yeah, as how he sought to look first, Seth's cows, frighted as he was, and found in the upper pasture nigh the devil's hop yard in an awful shape. And yeah, and it sounds like I'm taking the piss, and I'm not saying it to take the piss. Because the rest
it sounded like the way that they write fat slags in Viz. No, but they did. They wrote it phonetically, didn't they?
Yeah. Well,
yeah. I think this is what read then.
I'm going to fall on HP's side a little bit here. I do think his dialogue isn't the best dialogue I have ever read, but it's a bit like when you get a singer in a band who doesn't necessarily sing brilliantly, but is right for that band. And I usually say Liam Gallagher's a great one for that. If you took Liam Gallagher out and you just said, "Go and sing me Yesterday" by the Beatles, it would probably sound rubbish. But you put him in front of the right type of band, and it's all in his key, and it sounds great. And I actually think if you read it, and I found this with Mole Flanders, and I don't know if you've ever had the delights of reading Mole Flanders, Sean, but don't. No. Just don't.
I made a note of that one. Hang on a minute.
But I found it easier to read when I put on a really bad Texan accent, and that's where I think his dialogue does come in, because he is writing it phonetically, but we're reading it phonetically English, and it's phonetically Massachusetts. And it's a different accent completely, and that's where it can flummox quite a lot. I mean, his lead up to it, he doesn't do very good at describing how someone is talking before they speak, so it's a bit difficult to get it into your head. But it's a bit like who was it who wrote Jane Eyre? The Brontes or something like that.
Oh, the Brontes wrote Jane Eyre.
And they used to do it with the Yorkshire accent quite often, and it was almost unreadable at times because it was trying too hard to be phonetic into it. I mean, Irving Walsh does it, doesn't he, with the Train Spotting books, with all his books. He writes in that Scottish phonetic where you can only really read it if you can properly put the accent on it.
Yeah.
It's the only way it makes sense.
I mean, and you can also give... I just said, well, it was 1929. Well, Charles Dickens seemed to get things a bit right, didn't he?
Yeah. But again, he's English, and he has that English accent, so we're able to put it on that. And I think that's where it comes in. I think there's a little bit of a divide across the pond going on with that. It's not the best dialogue in the world. I'm not going to say it's brilliant dialogue, but I do think that the clunkiness in it is more to do. If you came from Massachusetts and you had a Massachusetts accent, I reckon that would actually sit quite nicely in what was said.
Oh, well, we can't argue with you, can we? But we're not here to argue with you. But you've got to give him the benefit of the doubt, because he's the master crafter horror writer, isn't he? So
absolutely. And to look at sort of like the positives on this, what were the things that we found scary in it?
Oh, I found a lot of it scary. I mean, even just like when he came to the fork in the road, and then the road started to narrow, and the trees seemed unusually large, and he's just like, wow. You're thinking, he thinks, for me, it was very evocative. You could see what he wanted you to see.
You're walking into those woods in the fairy tale, aren't you, that you should never go anywhere near?
Absolutely, yeah. It's took things upon. Yeah, on childhood stories too. He's really dragging everything in, isn't he? Yeah.
And I mean, I think for me, the most frightening thing in it was Wilbur, because Wilbur started off as sort of like this monstrous child, but towards the end of it, he's like all of us. He's trying to find a particular copy of a book. He's trying to sort of like get that book so that it's a workable stage for him. And people are getting in his way just because he's a little bit too book obsessed.
Yeah, yeah. And people do get in your way, don't they?
Too bloody often, yeah.
Every time I'm trying to open the door through to the elder gods, there's always someone telling me I can't do it. I agree with you. I think that's what makes it so frightening, isn't it? He just, like I said before, it's not just about capturing description. It's about capturing the emotion of that description. I wanted to read this out. This is from a letter that H.P. Lovecraft wrote to Zelie Bishop when he was talking about the area. He was talking about the area that he was using as his inspiration for the whole thing. And he said, when the road dips again, there are stretches of marshland that one instinctively dislikes and indeed almost fears at evening, when unseen whippoorwills clatter and the fireflies come out in abandoned profusion to dance to the raucous, creepy, instant rhythms of the piping bullfrogs. And that was a letter he wrote to somebody else.
Wow.
You know, and so it's obviously an area that's the way he saw it. And I think we've all had that. We've all had those parts, haven't we, when we were growing up? Be it a house, it was a woodland crop, or it was a particular street or alleyway. And it just put the absolute fear of God into you just by looking at it. Your imagination went absolutely crazy. And he's able to put that on the page in such a way that it evokes those feelings again.
I mean, I was already thinking, trying to think of how guttural everything was going to get with all this Satanism and, when it manifested itself. And, of course, I was listening to the audio book and he did it very well. But even I was racing. I wanted them to go quicker because I knew what was going to come was going to be quite catastrophic, and it was.
That's one of the things I love about it, Sean. The fact that it gets you wanting things to go quicker, and Lovecraft's there pulling on the reins, going, "No, well, you're going at my pace. Yeah, we'll get
absolutely, yeah, completely agree."
Pacing, his pacing is amazing, isn't it? Actually,
yeah, he's playing as like a virtuoso. He is. And of course, in writing terms, it's a good thing to remember, isn't it?
Yeah. Pacing is paramount. You've got to be able to play. It's one of the things I say about Dan Brown. Now, I'm not a Dan Brown fan, but what I do appreciate in what he does is his ability at the end of chapters to really hook you in and go, you want to know what's coming next, don't you? And H.P. Lovecraft does that to this. I actually think he does it in such a really clever way that you almost dread what's coming, but you're desperate to know, which has that childlike.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You've just put into words what I was trying to say before.
That's exactly it, isn't it? It's that first step into that dark alleyway that you definitely don't want to go into, but curiosity is too strong and you just keep creeping. Yeah, it's wonderful stuff.
Yeah. I was very pleased. In fact, I started to listen to it again.
Oh, very good.
At first I was thinking, oh, where are we going here? And then before you know it, you're reeled in, and it's over. So I might even have a listen again at some point when I'm pottering around that kitchen.
Yeah, I do think it ended a little bit too abruptly. I mean, for me, the horror soul really got real when we hit the part where it goes, above the waist, it was semi-anthropomorphic, though its chest, where the dog's rending paws still rested watchfully, had the leathery, reticulated hide of a crocodile or alligator. The back was piebald with yellow and black, and dimly suggested the squamous covering of certain snakes. Below the waist, though, it was the worst, for here all human resemblance left off, and sheer fantasy began. The skin was thickly covered with coarse black fur, and from the abdomen, a score of long, greenish-grey tentacles with red sucking mouths protruded limply. And it's just, Jesus, what the hell is going on down there? And why are you still looking? Why are you writing about it? What the hell is wrong with you, man?
Did nobody notice in the showers?
Jimmy Savile might have done because he was only about 3.
goes into the detail of the clothing being of such a size, the technology of being able to make clothing of such a size that it hides the deformity that's going on.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, quite amazing. I think I learned, I learned what I learned from it, but it was definite positive experience.
Yeah, it was for me as well. I think, I've been writing some stuff about Innsmouth, but I think I actually need to sort of write some stuff about Dunwich as well, because, there's clearly a lot going on in Dunwich.
Yeah,
it's an unusual story, which, spoiler alert for anybody who's wary of spoilers, they do manage to vanquish their foe in this story, don't they? Which is
that's not common in a Cthulhu story.
No,
to be honest.
No, this powder was a little bit of a tenuous little moving off the track of mastercraft. I thought this mysterious powder that was that they used to manifest him was a bit weird.
Black magic, isn't it? That's the whole thing. It's all that. It's spells, and it's interesting because it introduces the Necronomicon in this one really well as well, which is a big thing as well. Which in some other horror stories is the Book of the Dead, and often bound in the flesh of human skin. But I think in this one it's more of a Bible of the old ones, and he still calls it the Necronomicon. And it's really interesting stuff. I started doing some research because I was saying he's so bloody good wordily wise. He is so wordly, and being dyslexic, it makes it very difficult to stick in my head sometimes. So I started reading more I was doing more research, Ash, which will surprise you, because research isn't my thing. And I was reading about, I'm trying to find it here. There was a Welsh author that H.P. Lovecraft was really into, where a lot of his ideas seem to have come from.
All right.
And a lot of the names sort of come from there. I will be with you in a second as soon as I'll tell you what, if I just use the find function, type in Welsh, it will find me there. Arthur Machen.
All right.
You've heard of him?
Yeah, I have actually.
Right.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say the Welsh author Die Screaming, which would have been appropriate. But I've heard of Machen, but I'm not sure where I've heard of him.
Well, one of the ones he wrote was The Great God Pan,
right,
which is actually mentioned within the Dunwich Horror itself.
Oh, is it?
It's one of the books that's mentioned that the old man has. And it's interesting.
He doffs his cap to him then.
He absolutely doffs his cap to him. But also the description where you were saying that you were describing Wilbur, where he as it goes below the waist, it becomes very furry before turning into tentacles. And it is a pan. That's what I was thinking as you're reading it. And the ends are they're neither claw nor hoof, I think is the way he describes it. Which I always used to joke about H.P. Lovecraft, is he used to describe things by not describing them. It was a sound that was indescribable, and but it sums it up beautifully. But I think he was doing a lot of that kind of. And one of the reasons I think it does do a lot in England is I think he's really infusing a huge amount of English and Welsh and Scottish folk tales into this American fabric. And that's where that hybrid comes from into what's everything else. Because we already discussed a lot of the descriptions of the older ones are very H.G. Wells from All the Worlds. And there's a lot of lining up going on with that kind of thing. So he is a master craftsman, but he's almost writing fan fiction. Well,
I was thinking that the word Dunwich, of course, it's actually quite an English worded place, isn't it? But of course, when I listened to the audiobook, it was very much Dunwich. But so maybe he chose that word because it did travel to both countries. Because of course, through your research, he does appreciate a lot of the Scots and the Welsh and the English writers. So maybe he was thinking, well, I don't want it to just sell in the States. It could have easily been somewhere over here.
Yeah, exactly. I think when he gets into the village, it could be anywhere, couldn't it?
Yeah.
That's what he does. And when we read, was it Call of Cthulhu? When we read Call of Cthulhu, and you took the racism out of it, you still had that wonderful element of it can be anywhere in the world. It actually goes across the world, but everything just as you're reading it, it's almost on your doorstep. It's almost like you've been through villages, you've been through towns, and it's like that, where everyone's looking out at you, and you're worried that you're going to end up part of the stone circle or whatever. And it's just, I was also reminded of Dennis Wheatley a lot, actually, as I was reading it. And I was thinking that Dennis Wheatley probably used a lot of H.P. Lovecraft stuff when he was writing, because he was post World War II as opposed to pre, which is what H.P. Lovecraft mainly was. Right.
Yeah, so he could very well have been a reader of H.P., couldn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Very good.
Yes, very easily.
So does it in the horror genre? And I guess we're talking about the going back some years with this genre that we've been looking at. Does it get better than that?
There are horrors. I mean, this is cosmic horror, and I would argue in terms of frights, Stephen King is equally as good at.
But I would call that more.
But that's present day horror. Ramsey Campbell, who we actually read one of the H.P. Lovecrafts with on the podcast before. And if you watch this, Ramsey, because he's blooming brilliant. He writes cosmic horror in that way as well, and he's.
I see.
Yeah, very very good.
But Colin, you just sort of like pointed out, which is sort of like really kind of interesting and possibly worthy of a PhD level study, that the elements that we've got here within Lovecraft's cosmic horror are constructed of local folk horror.
Very much, yeah.
Almost as though one is a genre that's built on the substructure of the other, which is...
Well, from everything you look at, is if you look at all horror stories, they're pretty much underpinned by folk tales anyway, and they kind of come from that. If you go all the way back to, if you look at things like Little Red Cap, which is the original Red Riding Hood, and if you take away the other stuff, because loads of people like to put sex on top of everything, that's what they do. But if you take it as a,
sex on top of things,
They're guilty as charged. That
apart from the cheddar ice cream,
Well, you haven't tried it yet. It might end up being that way.
Yeah,
but try and make a body lotion for you.
Oh no, we've got a whole Sean Wilson's cheddar shower gel.
Yeah, you can't unthink that now, can you?
No, I'll take that to the grave. So if you start there and you actually look at it from horror tale point of view, because horror tales are quite moralistic, and even this one, if you really sort of like go into the bones of it, there's a lot of morals going on here. There's a lot of actual, the way that people are really horrid to people with deformities. It's not, they're instantly seeing people with deformities as being evil. It's not really stating that it is evil. This creature that has just got out because it's hungry. But there was actually, they were looking after it. It was still a deformed child that the family was looking after. So there's a lot of real sort of like moralistic underpinning of horror, and it's not just a question of frights and gore. Yeah,
but that would have been very much the social belief back then. I think it's probably changed now, but
it has changed.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Sean, to answer your question, horror that sort of like is even scarier from then on. I think you would be looking at urban legends. Because I think what we've got with Lovecraft is he was looking at the horror stuff, and this was coming out somewhere post World War One, when you'd got everybody sort of like thinking, perhaps there isn't a God, perhaps perhaps we are all masters of our own destiny, and he was sort of like showing us that there are bigger gods than that. And now, when you sort of like, following that, when you look at the urban legends that people were creating, saying, I'll tell you a fucking spooky thing that happened to a friend of mine. In that case, the horror becomes real because it's more tangible. It's something that this could happen because it happened to that person's acquaintance. So things like the story of the guy with the hook, or the story of, people wearing a beehive hairdo and actual bees went to live in it and ate her brain. Yeah, all of these things, we sort of like think of them now and we think, well, that's fucking stupid. But also at the same time, you think, do you know what? I mean, obviously, I'm never going to have a beehive hairdo, but yeah, you have people thinking, do you know what? I'm going to change my life so that I'm not living that way. Stories about...
That's the Spooky Pasta Project, isn't it?
Yeah, creepypasta.
Yeah, that's really kind of creepypasta. Sorry, yeah, creepypasta, which is where Slender Man came from. And the whole thing with that is to write a modern urban legend. And Slender Man, someone wrote the Slender Man story for that. So it was a very modern story that had absolutely no history whatsoever. And that one took hold and suddenly became an actual urban legend. And you know, the people in America committed murder. There's the two 14-year-olds, where one stabbed the other one because they were trying to find Slender Man's house, and it became pretty. Well, again, God. I'm pretty certain that's real, but I don't know. It could be part of the urban legend. But it's a very sort of like interesting way of looking at that, Ash. Actually, in that saying, yeah, so horrors that become scary now are based on, it's still like sci-fi, is it? Usually base them on something that we fear now. And then you twist it and you turn it around, you know, into other things. You know, for me now it's algorithms. Algorithms terrify me. And not so much the algorithm itself, but the way that people treat algorithms. They treat them as like they can't be wrong and they can only predict correct things. And it terrifies me that can possibly happen.
But, you know, when I was reading your play, what attracted me was that you were creating something that people aren't frightened of. They don't know they're frightened of it until it enters their brain through that play. And it's good because then they've got to think, okay, this is something new for me, and so then they've got to think new thoughts.
Yes.
And you can't think quick enough, and that's where it will be good. That's where it will work, and that's an interesting part of horror as well. It could be written in a way that takes you somewhere that you've not thought of before.
Well, it is a big thing with it. I mean, do you think that's what happened in this H.P. Lovecraft? Do you think? Well, actually, you almost described, didn't you? You were rushing it. You were wanting it to hurry up because you could tell it was coming.
Yeah.
But it's because your brain was thinking in such a way you were trying to catch up with it. Yeah.
It was, and of course, to me, this genre until this podcast has been unknown to me, and so you know, I'm enjoying it for exactly what it is. All these the backstories of connections to old tales and old English tales. It didn't, you know, come to me straight away. But now you mention it, it's like, oh God, yeah, that's an obvious, you know, it's an obvious underlying part of the story because you can see it.
You can see it there, can't you? And it's very. There was one that it was Sleepy Hollow, wasn't it? We read Sleepy Hollow a couple of weeks back.
Yeah,
that did the same thing, and we thought, you know, even though most of Sleepy Hollow was a bit tedious, but the end of it was fantastic. But the same thing was happening. It was these old stories and mainly as well is the European folk tales as well that seem to kind of build these beautiful foundations that these other things can build on top of.
Yeah, interesting. The old and the old tales mixed with newer inventions of the writer's mind.
Yes,
is where it's going, isn't it? Really. Yeah. Or it certainly was in 1929.
It certainly was in 1929.
It still is nowadays. I mean, well, I say nowadays, the films The Purge and all of the subsequent sequels about The Purge are horror films where, for anybody who's watching this who's not familiar with them, The Purge is set in a slightly futuristic America, and one night of each year you're allowed to do whatever the hell you like to other people. You're allowed to kill them, murder them, and there's no repercussions. And for some reason, I can't remember why, but that's not the point. You watch it for the violence, and the whole notion is that it's reflecting the violent society that we're living in, that we're moving towards this lawless society where people can and do kill one another regardless of things. And it's sort of like it's made more frightening because you think, yes, parts of society are becoming that lawless. Obviously, society isn't really so lawless that, do you know what? For one night of the year, the police are taking the night off and, yeah, go out and kill whoever the hell you want. But, it is like building on our fears that,
it doesn't seem beyond the realms of possibility.
Yeah, it seems quite
incredible. Exactly. Yeah. And that then enters the brain and you think, oh, good idea for a story, and then you're away, aren't you?
Uri Geller wrote a story about a game show that the prize was giving away children to childless couples. And it frightened him so much that he went and put a worldwide copyright on it so that no production company could ever actually do it.
Wow.
Because it's one of those things in that you write something that you think is just like a bit of a grotesque thing, and you sit back and you go, I can actually see a television company doing that one day.
The power of shit TV.
Yes, basically. And sensationalism. People like to be sensationalized. So here we go. Here's a big question then. Let's look at the importance of horror in society then in that case. Do you think the telling of these tales, that exaggerating things that frighten us now, are actually a good way of stopping us making that happen? You know, in terms of scare us now about things so that we don't go off and do all these stupid things in the future.
Well, I don't know. For me, it's a bit of a complex one. It's, I think we like to be frightened by something. Mm-hmm. You can titivate that part of the brain. But then, of course, you get the real horror of Putin and Russia and the despot. And is he going to take the globe with him when he dies of cancer? And all that. That's the real horror. And
absolutely.
Yeah. And that's another subject. But yeah, it is a fascinating genre. I'm really getting into it.
I want to sort of address Colin's point there. I think horror, we should treat it for the social context that it brings to things. But I worry that with this particular story, if we did treat it as a cautionary tale for what's mentioned in the story, in that case, it goes against everything that we have as free-thinking individuals. We should be sort of like, it's telling us to be wary of the person who's different. So Wilbur is sort of like different in the way that he sort of like matures, grows, and his interests and the way he appears. So we should sort of like be wary of people who are different, even though we shouldn't really. If you see somebody with a bit of a limp, a normal person just thinks, oh, they've got a bit of a limp. They don't think, oh, evil fucker. He's been sent by Satan. Wilbur is also interested in acquiring knowledge. He's sort of like trying to get that next copy of the Necronomicon. Now, admittedly, he's not going to be using it for good purposes. And yeah, we sort of like find that out and we know that. But the whole idea would be that if we were treating this horror as a cautionary tale, we would be there going, do you know what? You shouldn't be learning that much, really. There's too much learning going on. Stop it. Just go back to the farmland and look after your albino mother.
Yeah. It was grandfather's fault, though, wasn't it?
Yes, definitely. Yes. Which is why I changed my name for this evening to Kevin Waitley, just because I thought that would,
So oddly, in the role-playing game, he's Noah.
Oh.
That's his name in the role-playing game. It's Noah Waitley.
All right.
So who knows? Because HP never gave him a name.
No, he was just sort of like Grandpa, wasn't he? Yeah.
Which very, very similar, I thought, as Grandpa in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, if you've ever seen that, which was all based on the Ed Gein story.
I watched that one. I watched the new one the other day. I haven't
seen the new one.
Don't bother. Oh God, yeah, it's tedious. Yeah.
No shit, Sherlock.
oh no!
I have a new idea, guys. Stop trying to remake old stuff. Yeah. But it's very similar to that, isn't it? Because I mean, the Ed Gein story is a really interesting story because it completely. What was he? 1958, 1957, something like that. Ed Gein.
Somewhere around there, yeah. Although technically, did you know he's not a serial killer?
No, he's not a serial killer, but the reason he's notorious is because he basically frightened the crap out of America. Because what they call picket fence America, which are the small towns and all that kind of stuff, genuinely thought you could just leave your door open and everything was right and everyone's God-fearing. And then when they discovered what he'd been doing of digging up bodies and making furniture out of them, he was more of a ghoul than a serial killer. I think he only killed 2, actually. But
he might have killed his brother, but
and the backpacker. He killed the backpacker.
Yeah.
And did rather nasty things to her. But when they found that, and this was a guy that used to just come to the shops and all that kind of stuff, and it completely terrified that whole picket fence town, we are safe as a community part of America. And that's why Psycho is based on the Ed Gein story, as being just like, oh, he's an ordinary guy, but he likes to dress up as his mum. And then you've got Texas Chainsaw Massacre was also influenced by the Ed Gein story, because it's that whole small town, you wouldn't think anything, butter wouldn't melt in their mouth type people, and behind closed doors they're skinning people and pinning them up and making furniture out of their bones.
Yeah, and that was the whole premise behind Twin Peaks as well.
Yes, Twin Peaks, exactly the same sort of thing. And I actually think it goes back to this, because I think this is an absolute key example of that. But the difference here is, as you go to this town, you don't want to go there because it's scary as fuck to start with. It's just a horrid.
Whereas Twin Peaks was kind of underlining that it doesn't matter where you live, but something will be going on somewhere.
Yes. Yeah, but the actual place is quite idyllic, isn't it? It's a really nice place.
Lovely little place. Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed that that little excursion from the TV move, and because TV was so shit until then, and then of course, so then it builds all your hopes up, and then it goes shit again.
Well, they call them golden ages, don't they? There's sort of golden ages and silver ages of TV. But
brilliant, right? I loved that one. So, what are we reading next?
Oh, hang on! I said I was going to do one, wasn't I? Hang on, let me just look over here because I put it. There it is. Hang on, because this one intrigued me. Oh wait, what am I dropping over there? Right, anyway, this one intrigued me. I've gone back to weird women on this one.
All right.
Because, and there's a bit of the horror history. When Universal made The Mummy, on the back of loads of people going over to Egypt and digging things up, there was no real such thing as The Mummy's Curse, because the original version of The Mummy was just a rewrite of Dracula. And you can actually do a shot for shot. It's almost absolutely to the timings between the Dracula and the Mummy, and instead of it being smoke, he turns into sand, and it's all that kind of stuff.
Oh, come on, Davina, get on with the fucking title.
Shut up, yeah. All right. Anyway, so I was looking through these, and I found the Lost in a Pyramid, or The Mummy's Curse, 1869, by Louisa Mary Alcott. And I thought, I've not read that.
Yeah, I'll have to make a note of that.
Yeah.
Is that Little Women, Louisa Mary Alcott?
I think it is, yeah.
Right. Lost in the Pyramid, was it?
Yeah, Lost in a Pyramid, or The Mummy's Curse.
Yeah. Not tonight, I'm on my pyramid.
But it was I was intrigued by The Mummy's Curse, because, like it says, it's one of those things that is in everybody's psyche, but isn't as old as people think it is, that kind of thing. But there it is in an 1869 story. So that's what I'm putting us down for.
Excellent. Very good.
Right, yeah. Good. And I'm hoping that whoever reads it doesn't do all the Yorkshire accents that the last reader had. With something like ooh, hey up there. Hey, Fettler. Oh,
hey up there's covered in bandages.
Hey, fucking much.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So yeah, that's another serious literature discussion over and done with the Yorkshire accents on top of it. Yeah.
Well, I got to say, I thoroughly enjoyed that, and I'm taking a lot away from that. Actually, I think there's been some really nice and fantastic perspectives going on there today. So thank you very much, chaps.
Thank you. Yeah, really good. Enjoyed it. Enjoyed your company, Ash, Col.
Likewise.
Great. See you next time.
Okay.
Bye.
Au revoir. Bonne chance.